They called it a family gathering. I called it a test in tolerance, and I was failing quietly. The smell hit me first. Rosemary lemon and the kind of garlic butter that clung to your clothes for hours. Sunday roast Kate's favorite. I wiped my palms against my cargo pants, trying not to breathe in too deeply. My hands still smelled like coil grease, my nails stained from the HVAC motor I'd just replaced. The house hadn't changed. Not since I left at 24. Same cream wallpaper, same photos of Cate in her equestrian days lining the staircase. A lone photo of me sat in the hallway by the coat rack. Crooked too dark, taken on a day when I wasn't smiling. "Ah, there's our family mechanic," Cate chirped from the kitchen island, sipping wine like she belonged in a commercial for it. "Cute that you're still doing manual work." I bit the inside of my cheek and gave her a tight nod. No one asked why I was the one fixing the HVAC. They never did. It was just assumed Maggie handles things. Quietly, cheaply, without complaint. "Dinner's almost ready?" Susan called her voice warm like candle wax. "But I didn't know you were staying, sweetheart. We already set the table. There are some leftovers, though wouldn't want to mess up the seating plan." Of course. The table was set for 12. 12 plates, 12 glasses, 12 linen napkins and golden rings. I wasn't one of the 12. "That's fine," I murmured, stepping aside so she could carry a tray past me. Cate leaned in, stage whispering to George across the counter. She always was more comfortable around tools than people. George laughed. It wasn't cruel, just empty. That made it worse. "You've always been helpful, Mags," he said, patting my shoulder, like I was a golden retriever. "We're so lucky Kate's been handling the real financial stuff for the family. She's got such a head for it." I felt the words slide under my skin like splinters. Real financial stuff Cate had discovered the family trust 3 years ago. I was the one who'd paid the back taxes to keep it from dissolving. I'd used my savings, my future, down payment for a house. No one remembered. Or maybe they did. They just didn't care. Dinner was served with the kind of cheer that photographs well. Cate told a story about her latest gallery opening. Susan laughed a little too loudly. George refilled everyone's glasses, but mine. I sat on the edge of the living room sofa, balancing a paper plate on my knee. Macaroni and wilted salad. No roast. From where I sat, I could see the whole dining room. The chandelier glittered. The wine flowed. Cate was practically glowing. Then she stood lifting her glass. "To the people who make real sacrifices," she said with that sly gleam in her eye. Like putting up with broken ACs. Laughter erupted. Some nervous, some genuine. George chuckled. Susan covered her mouth politely. I stood, plate still in hand, and walked toward the front door. No one stopped me. Outside, the October air was sharp crisp with the smell of dry leaves and engine oil. I leaned against the porch railing, hands still smudged with grease. I looked at them, my hands. Tools of labor, not elegance. I was the one they called when things broke. But I was never invited when things worked. I stood on their porch, grease still on my hands, wondering how I became the help. I wasn't jealous of Cate. I was tired of pretending I admired her. The sun filtered through the windows of Willow and Vine, a quiet cafe nestled in downtown Fairfax. The kind of place with overpriced sandwiches and tables too close together where soft jazz trickled from hidden speakers and everyone pretended their conversations mattered more than their lattes. I'd chosen it because Susan liked the ambiance, and I, ever the peacekeeper, still clung to these fleeting moments of civility. My mother arrived 5 minutes late, breezy and polished in a cardigan that probably cost more than my entire week's groceries. She kissed my cheek as if we hadn't just seen each other at Kate's impromptu roast-the-help dinner. "How are you, sweetheart?" she asked, settling into the wicker-backed chair like royalty visiting the peasants. "I'm okay." "You busy, of course?" She sighed, pulling out her phone. "Kate's been swamped, poor thing. Her fundraiser for the preschool board has been eating up her time." Of course Cate had a fundraiser. Of course it mattered more. I sipped my tea and tried to steer the conversation toward neutral ground weather, the local election, the state of her hydrangeas. But every road led back to Cate. "I don't want to talk about her today," I said softly, attempting a smile. "I just wanted lunch with you." "Oh, Maggie, don't be like that," she chided gently. "You two are so different. Kate's just polished." And you're dependable. I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted copper. The door chimed behind us, and like some conjured spirit, Cate waltzed in. Phone in one hand, sunglasses perched on her head like a tiara. "Hope I'm not crashing," she said, already pulling out a chair. "Mom, I just got out of bar. Needed protein." She air-kissed Susan, ignored me, and waved to the waiter with the confidence of someone who expected the world to orbit her whims. "I'll have the Mediterranean bowl," she said. "Maggie'll have the same. It's light good for her." I opened my mouth, then shut it. Susan smiled approvingly, as if Cate had done something generous. Cate crossed her legs, showcasing her designer leggings. "Anyway, I've been working on a new education fund for Lila. College costs are going insane. I wanted to be proactive." "That's great," Susan said, beaming. "What a thoughtful mother." Cate turned to me, her eyes gleaming. "You inspired it, Mags. You're always so good with numbers, budgets. I thought, why not put that mindset to use?" I blinked. I hadn't spoken to her about anything financial in years. "Thanks," I muttered. Lunch arrived. Cate dominated the conversation, flitting from Lila's piano recital to her plans to redo the kitchen. She dropped names I didn't recognize and mentioned a networking brunch with a congressman's wife. Susan soaked it all in like sunlight. The check came quietly. Cate reached for her wallet, slid in a sleek black card, and handed it to the waiter without glancing. He returned seconds later, shifting awkwardly. "I'm sorry, ma'am," but the card was declined. Cate laughed a perfect lilting sound. "Oh my God, again! That bank is a mess. Maggie, could you?" I didn't move at first. Then, like a reflex too deeply trained, I handed over my card. "Thank you, sis. You're a lifesaver." She winked. The waiter returned receipt in hand. Cate snatched it quickly, folding it into her purse. "Gotta run," she said, kissing Susan on the cheek and waving her phone. "Conference call in 10. Ciao." She breezed out, leaving behind her unfinished lemon water and the scent of rose perfume. Susan dabbed her lips with a napkin. "She means well. She's just busy." I nodded, but my eyes were on the purse she'd tucked the receipt into. Something had felt off. I paid cash all week, and the only card I'd used was that one, a backup I barely touched. But the last 4 digits, the waiter mumbled. They looked familiar. Too familiar. That night, I pulled out my banking app and searched the account. Inactive. Or so I'd thought. A withdrawal had been made 3 days ago. Then another. Small amounts. Easy to miss. I stared at the screen, throat tightening. "I thought I closed that account years ago," I muttered, and my stomach dropped. Nothing says family like being told you don't belong at the main table. The Hale House looked like a catalog ad for holiday perfection candles, flickering on polished oak garlands, framing the doorway, and the scent of rosemary sage and too many expectations hanging in the air. I arrived with a homemade pumpkin pie cradled in my arms, still warm from the oven. No one asked me to bring anything. I just did. Old habits die hard. Through the front window, I saw them gathered already. Cate's laughter rose above the clatter of china. She was in her element. I paused before ringing the doorbell, smoothing down the sleeves of my sweater like it mattered. Cate opened the door, her smile wide and weaponized. "Mags, you made it?" she sang. "Perfect timing. Come in quick. It's chilly." I stepped inside, blinking against the brightness. Warmth pulsed from the fireplace, but I felt none of it. "I brought pie," I said, offering it like a peace treaty. Cate took it delicately with 2 fingers, as if it might leave a mark. How thoughtful. "We already have 2, but I'm sure we can find space on the sideboard." Susan walked past, air-kissing me, without stopping. "Happy Thanksgiving, sweetheart. We're just getting settled." I looked toward the long dining table stretching across the room. Crystal glasses, white linens, golden name cards tucked into folded napkins. Every place meticulously arranged. Except there was no spot for me. "Should I help set another place?" I asked lightly. Cate tilted her head, faux apologetic. "Oh, Maggie, it's just really tight this year. We weren't sure you were coming. Remember, with your schedule. George appeared behind her, rubbing his hands together like he'd just come in from the cold. We figured you'd be more comfortable in the kitchen anyway. You know, space to breathe, space to disappear. Susan laid a hand on my arm, barely touching me. Let's not make this about you. It's Thanksgiving. Dorothy stood in the hallway, arms crossed. She didn't say anything, but her eyes met mine and softened. It was enough to keep me from walking out right then and there. I'll find the kitchen, I muttered, clutching the pie. The room buzzed behind me as I made my way through swinging doors. The kitchen smelled of cinnamon and turkey fat. There was no table, just a stool, and a corner of the counter cleared beside a bowl of peeled potatoes. A single plate sat waiting. I lowered myself onto the stool and placed the pie on the edge. My knees brushed the cabinet handles. I'd worn my best jeans. Stupid! Muffled voices floated in laughter. Clinking glasses, forks, tapping porcelain. I picked at the stuffing on my plate, dry as chalk. From where I sat, I could see into the dining room through the small window in the door. Cate stood, wine glass in hand. The room quieted. Before we eat, she began, I just want to say how thankful I am for this family, for tradition, for shared values, for doing the hard work to maintain what matters. Applause broke out. Even George clapped. Susan dabbed at her eyes with a linen napkin. I stared at my fork. Dorothy glanced toward the kitchen door. I caught her again, watching me. She didn't smile, didn't look away. Just a quiet understanding, a thread of connection, too thin to call comfort, but strong enough to keep me upright. My fingers were trembling slightly as I reached into my bag. I pulled out my phone and turned it over in my hand, once before unlocking it. My thumb hovered, then tapped through the steps I already knew too well. Bank login, account, transactions. The withdrawals were clearer now. Repeating patterns, routing numbers, transfers to another name. I didn't cry. I just took out my phone and logged into that old account. I thought I had nothing left to lose until I realized I still had my name. The Sunday after Thanksgiving settled in like frostbite, quiet, sharp, lingering. Outside, the wind needled through the alleyways, rattling dead leaves against my window. Inside, my apartment was silent except for the low hum of my laptop and the occasional click of the mouse. The screen glowed in the dark, illuminating the mess of tabs I had opened: my bank, an archived email thread, the login page to a digital signature platform I barely remembered using. At first, I thought I was being paranoid. Then I saw the transaction. $200 wired out last week to an account ending in 0967. I didn't recognize it. Another one before that wired $800. A slow bleed, months long. I scrolled through, stomach tightening with every click. I picked up my phone. Kate's name blinked on the screen, mocking me with a smiling contact photo we hadn't updated in years. It rang twice. Mags. Her voice was sweet, syrupy. Wow, calling me on a Sunday night must be serious. Cate? I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Were you using my account? Pause. What account? The one ending in 2213. There are withdrawals I don't recognize, and one of them matches a deposit made to an education fund under your name. Oh, that she laughed like I just asked about a recipe. You signed the paperwork months ago. Remember? You said you'd help with the fund for Ellie. I stood up too fast, knocking over a mug of cold tea. It spilled across my notes. I never signed anything, Cate. Of course you did. It was a digital form. You clicked right through. You always do. Her voice darkened, almost pitying. Maggie, you should really keep better records. The line went dead. I sat down again, breath shallow. Fingers shaking, I scrolled back through my emails until I found it, a DocuSign confirmation sent 2 months ago. I clicked. There it was. My name, my signature. The date I'd been in North Carolina that day, doing emergency HVAC repairs for a corporate client. I had the receipts, the gas logs, the invoice. I grabbed my phone and dialed Dorothy. She picked up on the second ring. Hey, you okay? I think Kate's been using my accounts, I said flatly. There was a beat of silence. Maggie? She's been bragging about handling some trust fund for weeks. She made it sound like she was doing the family a huge favor. She even said something like, it helps when people don't read the fine print. I pressed a hand to my forehead. She forged my name. Dorothy exhaled. Then it's time you stopped being quiet about it. That night, I didn't sleep. I opened every file I had saved, every bank document, every tax return. I began building folders, screenshots, cross-references, timelines. Around 3 a.m., I called a number Dorothy had once passed me just in case. It rang longer than I expected. Jordan Ellis, the voice answered. Calm, male crisp. I explained everything, tried not to sound too desperate. You have a case, he said when I finished. But it won't be pretty, and it won't be quick. You'll have to prove intent, and the family dynamics will work against you in court. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. I don't care. I just want it to stop. He hesitated. Then start with documentation. Find one piece that proves she forged you. That's the wedge. I opened the digital signature record, again zoomed in on the metadata location timestamp. I cross-checked it with a receipt from a motel in Asheville. There it was. Solid, undeniable. I had proof. And for the first time, I didn't flinch, I filed it. They built their lies like a house of cards, assuming I'd never learn to blow. I'd never liked returning to Jordan's office. It reminded me too much of places Cate thrived in: glass walls, sterile air, the clink of ice cubes in water tumblers. But unlike Cate, Jordan didn't perform. He observed. And today, he had pulled up 3 more accounts linked to my social security number. Whoever did this, he said, leaning back in his chair, knew exactly how to bury liability under layers of legal convenience. I stared at the monitor. Property deeds, loan applications, 2 small shell corporations, none of which I'd authorized. Yet all bore some version of my digital signature. Could this all be tied to the family trust? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. He nodded. Yes. The trust fund Cate manages was used to leverage collateral. Your name was tacked on wherever hers couldn't be. I didn't blink. Not anymore. I was past the phase of giving her the benefit of the doubt. When I got home, I pulled out a locked fireproof box from the back of my closet. Inside were family documents my grandfather had given me, old deeds, notarized letters, tax records from when the Hale estate had been subdivided. I hadn't touched them in years, but now they whispered secrets I had ignored for too long. On paper stood out a land transfer document from my grandfather's estate. It had 2 signatures, his and mine. I remembered the day I signed it. I was 17. Cate was there too, watching me, smiling too politely. She hadn't signed that day, but now that document was being used as if she had. I leaned back and stared at the ceiling. All these years I thought I was the disappointment. The quiet one, the one with grease under her nails and no fancy title. Turns out I'd been the asset all along. My phone rang. Edmund Carlisle. I hadn't spoken to him since Cate forced him out of the business. He was the only adult who ever called Cate's bluffs and paid the price. I hesitated before answering. Maggie? He said, voice gravelly and warm. I heard what happened. Dorothy called. She's worried about you. She always worries, I said. My chest tightened. I'm okay. That bad, huh? There was something in his tone that made me sit up straighter. I might have something you can use. He continued. Before Cate pushed me out, I kept backup records. Project files, financials, client contracts, all of it. You were listed on more than you think. Why would I be listed? Because your name held more weight than you realized. He offered to send me a copy of the archive. I've held on to it for years, just in case. Just in case Cate went too far. 15 minutes later, I received a secure download link. The file name was simple. Hale, Family, Backup, ECD Zip. I opened it, breath catching in my throat. Inside were folders dating back a decade labeled by project year and initials. Some bore my name and file titles. Some referenced Cate's personal expenses being reimbursed by business funds. Others, more alarming, linked charitable donations and community grants to forged email approvals. I scrolled faster. One folder titled Unsent caught my eye. And there it was. A voice memo file isolated. If things go south, what M4A? Edmund hadn't mentioned it on the call. I hesitated. I knew Cate. She never left evidence behind, not without a reason. But something told me This wasn't hers by choice. My pulse quickened as I clicked it. The audio file opened. Static hummed. Then Cate's voice. "I don't know if you'll ever hear this," she began. "Calm, measured, dangerous. If anything happens, it wasn't just me. Dad knew. So did Susan. Maggie. Maggie was just convenient." I froze. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. The living room around me disappeared, shrinking into the walls as her voice continued. "They all thought I was the one pulling strings, but they handed me the strings one by one." I pressed pause, my finger trembling. Cate had built her life around manipulation, but this wasn't a confession. It was insurance, a lifeboat in case the ship started sinking. And I had it now. I stood slowly and looked out my apartment window. The sky had turned slate gray, heavy with December frost. The city below moved on unaware of what had just landed in my hands. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was preparing. And Cate had just given me her first real mistake. I pressed play, and Cate's voice filled my apartment. "When you pull the wrong thread, the whole lie begins to unravel." The first cold morning of December crept in through the thin insulation of my apartment, frosting the windows and settling deep in my bones. I wrapped my hands around a chipped coffee mug, staring not at the drink, but at the papers spread across my kitchen table, each one a breadcrumb, each one whispering the same name, Cate. I'd started with bank statements, but soon deeper patterns emerged. Digital approvals, expense reports, donor receipts, all bearing digital timestamps I never authorized. Approvals tied to me, but for purposes I'd never seen: transfers to front-facing charities, reallocation of funds between accounts that never reported back to the trust. My name wasn't just used, it was weaponized. I scrolled through a string of expense approvals from a foundation we'd funded together when our grandfather passed. Cate had taken the reins, of course. I'd been the silent partner. She'd handled the paperwork, another thing I'd let slide. I remember her joking, "You fix pipes. I fix balance sheets." What I didn't know was that she was fixing them in her favor. A note in one record stood out: payment to MW Initiative LLC. MW, my initials. I flagged it. By mid-afternoon, Dorothy texted, "Still want to hit that storage unit." The place hadn't changed. One metal door among hundreds. My key still worked, though. The lock groaned in protest. It smelled like mold, an old carpet, decades of forgotten memories clinging to cardboard. Inside plastic bins were labeled in Cate's handwriting, sorted precise and smug. Dorothy was already pulling gloves on, digging through a stack marked Tax Estate. "You think she left anything useful?" she asked, squinting at a dusty ledger. She always thought no one looked past page 1. Buried in a folder marked Charitable Disbursements, 2018. I found a file that shouldn't exist, a report noting a grant issued to a foundation that didn't match any of our prior lists. The EIN number was off by 2 digits. It had Cate's signature, mine too, except I never signed it. We scanned what we could, but one old flash drive wouldn't load. Dorothy frowned. "It's corrupted." "Can you send it to Edmund?" I asked. She nodded. "He's better at salvaging ancient tech than I am." By the time we locked up, it was already dark. I sat in my car engine, running heat blasting, trying to feel something other than this strange, cold momentum. I wasn't even angry anymore, just focused. When I got home, I found the message waiting for me. From Cate. "Can we meet? I feel like you're holding something against me." No subject line, no emojis, just that. She knew. She felt the shift, but I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I returned to the spreadsheet I'd flagged earlier. It was buried under layers of renamed folders, titled things like Budget, Final Reel, and Archive. 3. Typical Cate. Obscure, disorganized chaos disguised as method. The spreadsheet was clean, professional. A detailed ledger showing withdrawals from our shared investment portfolio into a company I'd never heard of, MW Initiative LLC. Filed under Marketing Wellness. The amounts weren't small. Over $240,000 had been funneled through that shell in 2 years. My initials were on everything. Then it hit me. Cate hadn't created a company in my name just to hide assets. She'd created it to make it look like I had access to them. If I hadn't pulled the drive from that storage bin, I would have never found it. The lie wasn't just in the theft. It was in the narrative. Cate wasn't just stealing from me. She was preparing to blame me. I leaned back in my chair, heart suddenly pounding, not from fear, but clarity. She was worried. She was losing grip. If Cate wanted a meeting, she must be scared. You don't need to scream to be heard sometimes. Silence is the sharpest weapon. The ballroom shimmered under soft chandeliers, their golden light reflected in dozens of wine glasses and polished silverware. Laughter drifted through the air, thin, brittle, like a glass about to crack. I stepped into that warmth with cold resolve tucked beneath my tailored coat. My heels struck the marble floor with a rhythm that felt deliberate. Each step was a note in a score only I could hear. The alumni dinner was in full swing strings, playing near the gallery entrance, hors d'oeuvres, floating past on silver trays. Familiar faces turned as I approached the check-in desk. One woman glanced at her sheet, then back up at me, a curious pause, stretching the moment. "Margaret Hale," she asked, her voice polite, rehearsed. "That's right." I handed her the envelope. Inside was a my confirmation of a sizable legacy donation, already processed, already finalized. It wasn't about the money. It was about the narrative. She handed me a place card with a small smile. "You're all set." Cate's voice floated from the far end of the room, amplified by the mic. She was mid-speech, already standing beneath a large projection of her name and title. "We've always believed in giving back. And thanks to the tireless efforts of this committee, our legacy fund continues to grow each year, supporting scholarships and research that honor our shared values." My eyes found her confident and gleaming the model of composure in a ruby red sheath dress. To the room, she sparkled. To me, she flickered. I moved silently along the edge of the ballroom, not drawing attention, not needing to. I could already see Jordan watching me from across the room, a barely perceptible lift of his brow, my only greeting. He leaned against a calm expression unreadable, but I knew he'd noted my arrival. And more importantly, so had a few others. The MC stepped up after Cate's speech, flipping through her cards. "Before we move to dinner, we'd like to acknowledge a recent generous addition to the Legacy Fund, a contribution made by Ms. Margaret Hale." Heads turned, not all at once, but enough to ripple through the seated guests like a change in barometric pressure. Cate's eyes found me, her smile faltered. A single beat of silence passed, then scattered applause. Awkward, confused, hesitant. I simply nodded. I wasn't here to steal anything. I was just claiming what had always been mine. During the mingling that followed, snippets of conversation floated past me like drifting ash. I thought Cate managed that donation. Didn't her name used to be on the sponsor list? Maybe they co-chaired strange timing. Don't you think I sipped my wine and said nothing? Jordan approached briefly, offering a mock toast without clinking glasses. "You didn't raise your voice," he murmured. "I didn't need to. She's rattled. She should be." He gave a quiet laugh, the kind that acknowledged both danger and respect, then drifted away again. I found myself staring at a framed plaque near the dessert bar, last year's donors etched in gold. Cate's name was at the top. Next year, mine would replace it. The restroom offered a cool silence, the echo of water from a running faucet, the only sound. I stood at the mirror, touching up a non-existent flaw in my lipstick when the door opened with too much force to be casual. Cate's reflection joined mine, sharper than usual. "Well," she said, "you really do enjoy spectacle when you feel cornered." "I wasn't trying to be seen," I replied. "You just always forget who's watching. You're doing this to embarrass me." I turned to face her fully. "No, Cate. Embarrassment is spontaneous. This is methodical." She folded her arms. "So, what's your plan? Take credit for everything? Rewrite history. I'm just correcting the version you told?" Her voice dropped. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing. Yet." That shook her. Her posture wavered for a breath. Her lips parted, then closed. She wasn't used to silence that bit back harder than shouting ever could. "Follow the money?" I added quietly. stepping past her. She stared at me as if I'd slapped her because I hadn't needed to. Revenge isn't loud. It's quiet, calculated, and undeniable. The new year hadn't even begun, but I was already done making resolutions. My kitchen table had turned into a war desk. Documents stacked in surgical order highlighters bled dry and my laptop glowing like a searchlight in the dark. Outside, snow drifted lazily past my window, indifferent to the choices being made inside. Jordan leaned over the screen, reading line after line with his brows pulled taut. "You weren't exaggerating," he said, his voice even. "This isn't just mismanagement. It's deliberate, layered. Cate's had practice." I didn't reply. My fingers tapped lightly on a mug of tea, gone cold. Every time I thought I had uncovered the worst of it, something else surfaced: an account, a memo, a signature I didn't remember giving. But that's the thing about manipulation. It hides in plain sight depending on your trust to remain blind. Edmund's message came through just before 10. All decrypted, voice memo attached. I clicked the file and let the audio wash over us. Cate's voice, recorded and carelessly cruel, spilled from my speakers. It's not like she reads the fine print. I mean, she clicks accept like she's signing a gym waiver. Honestly, I've been keeping things afloat. If Maggie's name gives it credibility, why shouldn't I use it? Jordan's expression darkened. She said that in a business meeting, close enough. It was a strategy call. Edmund saved the raw files before she wiped the drive. And she really thought no one would find this. She always assumed I was the quiet one, invisible, useful, but unremarkable. Jordan sat back. That's about to change. Over the next 2 hours, we filed every motion the law allowed. A formal revocation of Cate's financial privileges. A notice to financial institutions to freeze joint accounts and flag suspicious activity. A request to the family trust for full audit transparency. Each document was another gate closing behind her, tightening the corridor she had once strutted through. I even drafted a personal notice to the Hale family board, alerting them of an internal investigation. No blame, just facts. Cold, objective lines that would whisper louder than accusations. "She'll retaliate," Jordan warned. "She already has," I replied. "I'm just finally responding." The paperwork wasn't what exhausted me. It was the memories it dragged out. Every signature reminded me of a time I gave her the benefit of the doubt. Every notarized form echoed with silence I had swallowed. There's something brutal about learning your love language was compliance. That evening, fireworks started early in the sky, spitting color into the frozen hush of the city. I watched them from my apartment window, the flickers reflected on the glass like ghosts. This was supposed to be a holiday. But I wasn't celebrating. I was calculating. Then came the email. Subject: think carefully. This will destroy us both. Think carefully. You're angry, but we're still family. Don't do something you can't take back. See no greeting, no apology, just veiled menace dressed in concern. I stared at it for a while. The Cate I used to know would have called me. This Cate, cornered, unraveling, resorted to fear tactics. A panic play. She was losing grip, and she knew it. I opened a new tab and logged into the IRS whistleblower portal. It took 3 tries to upload all the documentation PDFs of forged authorizations, digital logs of unauthorized access, the voice memo where she laughed about borrowing my name. One final field: additional comments. I typed, "This is not about vengeance. It is about protection for myself and anyone else who might be next." Then came the button. Submit. My hand hovered for a moment, not from hesitation, but reverence. This wasn't just about Cate anymore. It was about reclaiming the years I'd spent being palatable, predictable, polite. I didn't hit send with anger. I hit it with clarity. You can only dance on a cracked floor for so long, eventually it gives way. The email hit the local news blog at 9:12 a.m. sharp. The subject line was vague. Concerns regarding local technicians' mental health, but the body was surgical in its intent. Anonymous sources, vague accusations. Words like erratic, unstable, and volatile used without attribution, but brimming with poison. By 10 or a.m., I could feel the shift in my office. Conversation stalled when I entered the break room. A coworker I'd trained avoided eye contact. Someone else left a copy of the blog open on the communal printer as if daring me to acknowledge it. I didn't. Instead, I sat quietly at my desk answering emails while my stomach tightened like a fist. The silence wasn't just uncomfortable, it was strategic. Cate's fingerprints were all over this, and she knew exactly how to twist the knife without leaving prints. At 11:23 a.m., my supervisor approached. She wore a soft smile, sympathetic, rehearsed. "Maggie, maybe it's best to take a little personal time. Clear your head. No one's judging you. We just want you to be okay." I nodded. What else could I do? They weren't firing me. They were sidelining me. Quietly, efficiently, like Cate always did. Back at home, I dropped my bag by the door and sat on the edge of the couch, still in my coat. I stared at the blank TV screen, its reflection showing a woman I barely recognized. Tight lips, red eyes too still. The apartment felt too quiet, too clean, as if untouched by chaos yet vibrating with it beneath the surface. A knock came at the door. I opened it and there she was. Cate, not a hair out of place. Designer coat, cinched perfectly, lips painted with casual cruelty. "You started this," she said, stepping past me like she still had keys. "So let's be adults and end it before we both get burned." I didn't answer. She turned, scanning the room like it offended her. "Look, I get it. You're upset. You think I took something from you. But dragging this into public view? That's not just petty, it's dangerous. Dangerous for who?" I asked, voice low. She smiled, smug, pitying. You're spiraling, and everyone can see it." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You came here to scare me, but you're the one who should be scared." Her eyes narrowed, but I didn't flinch, didn't blink. When she left, the door closed with a whisper. I leaned against it, heartbeat hammering in my throat. Minutes later, Dorothy arrived with coffee. And that steady presence I was starting to depend on more than I wanted to admit. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't need to. She just sat beside me, handed me the cup, and said, "I see you. Don't let them take that away." I nodded, clutching the warmth. After she left, I sat at my desk for hours, eyes burning, scrolling through PDFs and file names that hadn't made sense months ago. But now every transaction, every digital signature, every minor discrepancy pulsed with new meaning. She hadn't just stolen money. She'd stolen time, identity, and trust. One email in particular caught my eye, sent from Cate to a foundation board member 6 months ago. She had used my name to guarantee a donation I never made. I checked the signature. Digital. Backdated. If I hadn't known the day she claimed I signed, it was the day I was in Chicago at a conference, I might have doubted myself. I added it to the growing list. Then I opened a folder Edmund had titled, "For Maggie's Eyes Only." Inside, photos of old receipts, scanned documents, internal emails from the family office Cate managed like a queen. I found one memo she wrote to the CPA. "Maggie doesn't read the fine print, she just wants peace." My jaw clenched. It wasn't just greed, it was entitlement. She truly believed she had the right to use me. The weight of it hit me, not just what she'd done, but what I'd allowed. All the times I swallowed discomfort. All the times I said, "It's not worth the fight." Well, now it was. And for once, I didn't feel powerless. This wasn't just about restoring my name. It was about reclaiming the years they erased with laughter and pity. I opened Jordan's shared drive and uploaded everything. I was ready. Jordan's name popped up on my phone. A single text. "She pulled your employment records. She's going nuclear." I was losing fast, but I hadn't played my final card. In the age of data, the truth doesn't scream, it uploads. The moment the screen lit up with the decrypted folder, I knew we'd crossed a threshold. Jordan sat beside me, the glow of the monitor reflecting in his glasses, as the files loaded one by one. Voice memos, bank trails, notarized forms with my forged signature. Each document felt like a ghost of a betrayal lined up like evidence at a trial that had been waiting to happen for far too long. She documented everything, Jordan muttered. Cate really thought she was untouchable. She was, I replied. Until now. We were in his office, tucked above a sleepy block of Fairfax, the kind of place where nothing dramatic should happen. But this wasn't drama. It was war. One I hadn't started but was finally ready to finish. On the desk, my old external drive hummed quietly. In it, the final piece Edmund had recovered after hours of untangling corrupted backups. A file labeled simply Hale Ledger Secure. Inside were spreadsheets tracking misused family funds, line item transactions, from trusts that bore both our names, and a damning series of audio memos, Cate laughing about borrowing Maggie's name to keep things running. I sat still, letting the facts settle around me like falling ash. She tied your name to 3 shell accounts, Jordan said, scrolling. One of them is active. Guess where it routes to? I looked at him. Let me guess. The foundation she started for her daughter. He nodded grimly. It's all here. That night, I didn't sleep. I moved from Jordan's office to Dorothy's kitchen table. Laptop, open thumb drive, plugged in fingers trembling, not with fear, but with a long, delayed sense of purpose. Dorothy handed me a cup of tea without a word, her presence the only steady thing in a world that had tilted for years. I'm uploading a secure backup to a whistleblower server, I told her. Password protected. If anything happens to me, it goes to the press. And the IRS? And the Attorney General. She placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. You've thought of everything. No, I said. Quietly. Cate did. I just followed the trail. As the progress bar reached 100%, a strange peace washed over me. Not joy, not relief, just stillness. Like the moment before the storm hits when everything finally makes sense. I opened a bookmarked folder labeled Statements. In it was a scanned copy of the trust agreement from 8 years ago, my signature digitally replicated. I had proof now that the date was falsified. The signature style didn't match my documents from that time. Jordan would later confirm that the IP address traced back to Cate's home Wi-Fi. Trust is everything Cate had once said in an interview. I found the article again, the one she gave to Richmond Business Monthly, and read it aloud at Dorothy's table. Without trust, you have nothing. I stared at the glossy image of her face beside the quote. That face had smiled while stripping me of my name. I drafted 3 emails, one to the IRS Fraud Division, one to the local reporter who'd reached out last week suspecting something bigger than a family dispute, and one to Jordan titled Initiate. Then I picked up my phone, reread Cate's last text. This will destroy us both. Think carefully. She was wrong. I hit send, calmly, deliberately. I didn't hit send with anger. I hit it with clarity. They thought I wouldn't show up. They forgot I built everything they're standing on. I stepped out of the car into cold February light, the kind that makes the whole world look sharper than it is. Outside the courthouse, a small knot of reporters hovered pens, ready eyes scanning. Most of them were looking for Cate, but they saw me first. I didn't flinch. Jordan had warned me. If she plays victim, the only thing that speaks louder than tears is proof. I had brought all of it, and I wasn't hiding anymore. Inside the conference room was beige, sterile, unforgiving. Fluorescent lights buzzed faintly. Folding chairs creaked under the weight of anticipation. I sat across from Cate for the first time since Thanksgiving. She was flawless as ever. Cream blouse pearls, not a strand of hair out of place. But I saw the chip in her polish, a faint tremor, in the way she adjusted her cuff. Cate Hale, trustee of the Hale Family Fund, the panel chair began, and Margaret Hale, co-signer of affiliated accounts. Today's inquiry is preliminary, but official. Cate's legal team opened with a flurry of deflection. Ms. Hale, the lead attorney gestured to me without looking directly at me, has displayed troubling behavior. We urge this committee to consider the psychological strain she may be under. We move to delay these proceedings. Jordan stood slowly. Calm. We've anticipated that tactic. He handed over the binders, thick, color-coded, time-stamped. Inside financial trails, forged e-signatures, phone recordings. We're not delaying. We're asking for clarity. A ripple passed through the room. Even the stenographer blinked twice. One of the committee members leaned forward. I didn't speak yet. I didn't need to. Edmund entered next, laptop in hand. He greeted the panel, sworn under oath, and opened his files. These are metadata logs confirming the dates and IP addresses associated with every signature. I ran a checksum scan. Zero chance they were fabricated from Ms. Maggie Hale's end. Someone gasped softly. I kept my eyes on Cate. She was staring at Edmund like he'd betrayed her. He had, but not unjustly. And this? The chairman asked, raising a small flash drive Edmund had handed over. Voice memo. Unedited, Edmund said. Miss Cate Hale describing, quote, borrowing Maggie's trust since she doesn't check the books anyway. Kate's lawyer objected something about tone sarcasm out of context. The panel asked for silence. Cate broke first. This is absurd, she snapped, rising to her feet. This is my sister. She would never. Sit down, Ms. Hale, one of the panelists said sharply. Your turn will come. For a second, her lips curled like they used to when we were kids, and she got caught lying. But this wasn't our childhood bedroom. This was under oath. I met her eyes across the table. I didn't blink. The evidence piled up like snow invoices. Shell company transfers, phantom donations, power of attorney authorizations filed while I was out of state. I heard the mutters from the press section. I saw the shifting glances among the committee. And I felt deep down that crack in Kate's carefully curated world beginning to widen. The chairman cleared his throat. Given the evidence presented, this committee issues the following: a temporary suspension of all financial activity within the Hale Family Trust. An audit will commence immediately. Further, Ms. Cate Hale is to relinquish access until this audit is complete. Cate gasped. You can't, but they could. And they had. Cameras flashed. I rose not to gloat, but because the air in the room had shifted. Something final had landed. Cate turned toward me, her voice low, almost inaudible beneath the stirrings of chairs and murmurs and zipping of bags. You'll regret this. I didn't respond, but for the first time I knew I wouldn't. She built her kingdom on my name, now the crown is burning. The television glowed against the pale walls of my apartment, its blue light washing over my hands as I clutched my mug. I hadn't planned to watch it live. But when Dorothy texted, "They're airing it tonight," I couldn't pretend not to care. The reporter's voice was calm, almost gentle, an odd contrast to the storm they were unleashing. In tonight's exclusive, we've obtained internal recordings and documents involving prominent community figure Cate Hale. The audio you're about to hear has been verified by 2 independent forensic analysts. Click. Kate's voice crackled through the speaker. Unmistakably hers. She didn't even notice when I signed in her name. I swear sometimes I think Maggie likes being invisible. A pause. The sound of someone laughing in the background, hers light and cruel. Dorothy was beside me. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. That one sentence carried the weight of every erasure, every slight, every carefully orchestrated dismissal I'd endured under the guise of family. The next morning, the phone started ringing. First Susan. Her number flashed across my screen like a ghost from another life. I hesitated, then answered. "Hi, sweetheart," she said too softly. We saw the news, and I wanted to talk, privately, about what I asked." "Cate," she whispered, "your father doesn't know I'm calling. He's still processing. But I think it's time we talked. Just us." There was no apology. Not yet. Just discomfort. Guilt trying to find its footing. A few hours later, George called too. Unlike Susan, he sounded defensive, brittle. "This is a smear campaign," he snapped. "She's your sister, Maggie." "She forged my name on mortgage paperwork," I said flatly. "Want me to forward the PDF?" Silence. Then the beep of a dropped call. By that evening, I learned Cate had been removed from 2 nonprofit boards. The local news ran follow-ups. Editorials shifted from praise to questions. A law student group at her alma mater issued a statement calling for her honorary award to be rescinded. Then Samuel disappeared. I'd never met him, not properly, but he'd been featured in their Christmas cards, smiling in matching flannel. Now his Instagram was gone. Dorothy, ever resourceful, forwarded me a screenshot from a mutual acquaintance. Apparently, he left town. No comment. And just like that, the perfectly stitched portrait of Cate's life began to fray. One board seat here, one reputation there. And beneath it all, the truth she'd built on my name lay exposed. The official letter arrived next. It came in a cream envelope bearing the seal of the State Bar Association. Dear Ms. Hale, after review of the submitted documents, audio recordings, and third-party witness accounts, we formally recognize that you were the victim of unauthorized identity usage, resulting in professional and personal consequences. While not criminally liable, you are eligible for full financial restitution under state protections. Sincerely. I didn't cry. I read it twice, then placed it next to the vase of dried lavender Dorothy had brought last month. Proof not of victory, but of survival. That night, just as I was brushing my teeth, the phone rang again. Cate. Her name appeared like a crack in the glass. I answered. I don't know why. Maybe because I needed to hear what broken pride sounded like. At first, just breathing, then a choked sound. Maggie? She said, her voice thick, fragile. I didn't think you'd really destroy me. My reflection looked back at me in the bathroom mirror, older, steadier. You destroyed yourself, I replied quietly. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences. A sob, a plea buried in shame, then silence. She hung up first, and in the hush that followed, I felt the weight shift. The kingdom she built had crumbled, and I was still standing. Jordan didn't speak right away. He just slid a folder across the table, the corners crisp, his expression unusually unreadable. I flipped it open, hands steadier than I expected. Audit results, he said finally. Cate's fully liable. Misappropriation, identity, misuse, perjury. You're cleared on all counts. The breath I didn't realize I'd been holding left me in one long, quiet exhale. I had imagined this moment 100 times, some versions filled with celebration, others with tears. But now, as the words echoed softly between us all, I felt was stillness. Not relief, not triumph, just stillness, as if a part of me was waiting to see if this was real. They've frozen all joint trust operations, Jordan continued, and she'll be facing civil suits not just from you, from donors, from nonprofits. Even the IRS is interested now. I nodded slowly. It's finally happening. He leaned back, folding his hands together. It's over, Maggie. At least the worst part. But was it really? Later that day, I sat across from Dorothy at her kitchen table, the warm scent of rosemary tea curling between us like a soft rope tying me to reality. She poured me a cup without asking, as if she knew I'd need something to hold on to. You look like someone who survived something, she said gently. I feel like someone who forgot to plan for survival. Her smile didn't reach her eyes, but it was kind. It's strange, isn't it? When the fight ends and you're still standing, but not sure where to walk next. I stared into the tea, watching the steam rise and vanish. I've been fighting so long, I don't know what peace looks like anymore. Dorothy reached into her sweater pocket and pulled out an envelope. This came for you. Susan sent it to my address. Thought you might want it when you were ready. The name on the front stopped me. My mother's handwriting. Still careful, still distant. I hesitated, then opened it slowly. Inside was a letter. Handwritten uneven in tone, like she had started and restarted it a dozen times. She didn't say sorry, not in so many words. But there were admissions woven between the lines, that she hadn't known how to balance 2 daughters, that Cate had always needed more attention, that maybe she confused loudness with leadership. She wrote, I never realized silence could be so loud. And then, at the end, I hope you're okay. I folded the letter slowly, pressing the creases sharp. I didn't know if I forgave her, but I knew I didn't hate her. Not anymore. I had simply outgrown needing her to understand. That night, I walked alone through the snow-dusted streets wrapped in my coat, the cold air biting at my cheeks like old memories. The sky was low, heavy with more snow, and the world felt quiet in a way that didn't hurt anymore. I wasn't looking for anything, but I found myself standing in front of the old Hale house. The porch light glowed gold just like it used to. The bushes were still overgrown on the left side. Someone had hung a wreath, but it leaned slightly as if it didn't want to stay. It looked smaller now, not physically, emotionally. This house had once loomed over me like a cathedral of unspoken rules and invisible rankings. Now, it was just a house, wood brick, bad memories, and things left unsaid. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't curse it. I didn't even feel the cold anymore. Then I pulled out my phone, lifted it slowly, and took a photo. Not to remember it, but to remind myself I'd never go back. Justice isn't revenge. It's a reckoning and a return. There was something poetic about the meeting being held on the top floor glass walls. City skyline, the world stretching out like a map, waiting to be redrawn. I sat across from a woman named Claudia Mercer, the managing partner of a consulting firm I used to dream about during long, unpaid hours in the Hale office basement. Back when I still believed hard work alone was enough. I've reviewed your independent audit summaries, your recovery strategy, and frankly, Claudia said, folding her hands, you're exactly the kind of mind we want guiding restructuring cases. I blinked. You want me to advise? I want you to lead. The offer was on the table, more than generous, respectful of what I'd survived and what I'd built out of the wreckage. I didn't accept right away. I asked for time not out of hesitation, but because I wanted to savor the silence after the storm, to feel the difference between reacting and choosing. That afternoon, Jordan met me at a coffee shop near the courthouse. His suit was rumpled tie loose, but his eyes held the weight of good news. The restitution agreement is finalized, he said, sliding over the documents. You're being repaid in full every trust fund transaction, every property manipulation, even back interest. My hands trembled slightly as I held the papers. That much you lost years, Maggie. This doesn't undo that, but it's a start. I nodded slowly. It feels strange seeing it all in print, like it wasn't just a nightmare. He tilted his head. It wasn't a nightmare. It was a trap, and you clawed your way out. Later that week, I returned to the Hale estate, not to stay, not to reminisce, just to close a chapter. The driveway crunched beneath my boots as I stepped out of the car. I hadn't been back since everything. The house looked the same. Too big, too curated. Like a set built for a performance no one believed in anymore. Dorothy stood beside me as a notary walked us through the paperwork. I signed over my portion of the estate, not out of anger, but because I didn't need it to prove I belonged. As the ink dried, I caught sight of Cate through the window. She stood behind the curtain, half-shadowed arms crossed. She didn't come out. Good. There was nothing left to say. She looked smaller, like her shape had collapsed inward too heavy with the weight of her own undoing. I didn't feel triumph, just finality. Before I left, I placed a single envelope in the foyer. No letter inside, just a copy of the press release I was sending out that evening. It read, "The silence ends here. Margaret Hale, consultant." That evening, back in my apartment, the sun dipped low, turning the windows amber. A contractor was just finishing up outside. When he nodded, I stepped out to look. A new black mailbox stood proudly at the front gate. Not flashy, just clean, simple, solid. And on the side, in engraved brass, Margaret Hale, consultant. Not Maggie the problem, not Kate's sister, not the forgotten daughter, just me. I ran my fingers across the plate. For the first time in a long time, the name felt like mine again. They once erased me with silence. I answered with a signature. The cabin was quiet in that way. Only early morning knows just the occasional rustle of pine needles outside and the gentle lapping of the lake against the dock. The sky hadn't yet turned gold, still lingering in a soft slate blue. I sat on the porch, wrapped in a wool blanket, the leather-bound journal balanced on my lap, a pen resting between my fingers. The fire inside the cabin had died down to embers, but the kettle still hissed faintly from the stovetop. Derek was awake. I could hear him moving around inside quietly, the way people do when they've learned your silences mean something sacred. I opened the journal to the last page. Not for anyone else. Not for lawyers or the media or even Dorothy. Just for me. And for Cate. Dear Cate, I don't hate you. I thought I might once. But hate is just another form of attachment, and I've spent too long being attached to your approval, your games, your shadows. I used to wonder what I'd done wrong to make you twist things the way you did. Was I too quiet? Too accommodating? Did I make it easy for you? Maybe. But here's what I know now. I won't lose myself for you again. That girl, the one who paid your debts, who took the fall, who sat in the kitchen while you toasted to family she's gone. I survived your version of love, and I let it go. I paused, staring at the words. They didn't hurt to write. That surprised me more than anything. I folded the letter and slipped it into the back pocket of the journal behind all the pages, filled over the last few months. Notes, memories, strategy maps, late-night fears that never made it into public view. They didn't need to. The past didn't deserve to follow me into the next room. My phone buzzed on the railing. A message from Dorothy. You coming to the lake later? I typed back. Already here. Derek stepped onto the porch, 2 mugs in hand. He didn't say anything, just handed me mine, still warm, steeped with that cinnamon blend I always forgot I liked until I was holding it. We sat. Together, but not needing words. Down below, the lake began to reflect the sky, soft pinks bleeding into still water. It reminded me of the photo I kept tucked in my journal, one of the last few remnants I hadn't yet decided what to do with. An old family picture, one of those forced smile holidays when everything looked perfect but nothing was. I slid the journal open and took it out. The faces stared up at me, George's proud grin, Susan's stiff posture, Cate in the middle with her polished hair and staged warmth. And me. Off to the side, holding the edge of the photo like I didn't quite belong inside it. I looked at it one last time. Then I stood, walked to the fire pit and tossed it in. The paper curled quickly edges, crisping colors vanishing into ember memory. The flames flickered warm against the dawn. For once, I didn't flinch. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need their apology. I had my name back. If someone keeps pushing you into the shadows, don't wait for them to pull you into the light, build your own. Don't let guilt or history chain you to people who benefit from your silence. Speak up not for vengeance, but for peace. Keep your receipts literally and emotionally. The truth has a way of surfacing, but it needs your courage to carry it. And most importantly, remember walking away from what breaks you isn't betrayal. It's healing. Your name, your worth, your story, they belong to you. Reclaim them. Quiet strength is still strength, and sometimes it's the loudest kind.